I think that not only do we suffer from racism and sexism and things like that, but we also suffer from ageism, and that is that once you reach a certain age, you're not allowed to be adventurous, you're not allowed to be sexual, you know, and I think that's rather hideous.
Women get older and men get
older,
dignified or character.
That by hook or by crook, I wanted to have this phrase on the album saying, "We're not young, we're not old, we're golden." And it was born from my previous album promotion, where I was just asked so much about having to have an answer for being a woman my age in the industry, and I just didn't know the answer. I was getting really frustrated.
I could accept getting older, but I don't plan to disintegrate.
Pop music is ultimately founded upon escapism. It allows you to fall through the looking glass, offering an entrance to an alternate world, a sonic sanctuary that whisks listeners out of their trauma, their routines, and ultimately their everyday life. It's a genre that eventually bites back. Pop is all about the fantasy of perfection, the fairy tale of accessing the unattainable, reaching somewhere over the rainbow, somewhere only youth exists. Pop is fantasy. Pop is youth. As a result, the mere idea of simply celebrating older artists feels like an unwelcome disease to the foundational dogma of youth that rules the promotion of pop. There's always been a ticking time bomb placed around the necks of pop stars, and this imminent destruction had little to do with the quality of music and more to do with the passage of time. Pop is prejudice. Pop is ageist. For this reason, many pop stars were often forced to lie about their age, as a matter of survival. Geri Halliwell claimed to be 21 when she debuted with the Spice Girls when she was actually 25. Nicole Scherzinger claimed to be 28 when she was 30. And Anastasia pretended to be in her early 30s before admitting she was actually 40.
Why the age was always so different in the papers is because I could never remember what it was. They're like, and how old are you, Anastasia? And I was like, 27. 1975, yeah.
And if we look at how little representation women over 40 have in the charts, lying about your age seems like the clever thing to do. Cher was the oldest woman ever to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 at age 52 with Believe in 1998. That's over a quarter of a century ago. And since then, only 2 women older than 52 have hit #1 in the US, Mariah Carey and Brenda Lee, with 2 well-established, decades-old Christmas songs that they recorded in their youth. So although technically they were above 50 when they achieved the chart topper, the songs originated when they were under 25. In the UK, Kate Bush at 63 was the oldest woman to top the charts when Running Up That Hill had a resurgence thanks to Stranger Things. However, again, this song was an established top 3 hit in 1985 when Kate Bush was in her late 20s. A woman over 50 hitting big with a new original song that was not recorded in her youth honestly rarely stands a chance.
I mean, what are you supposed to just die when you're 40?
Now, we can't talk about this topic without discussing the Queen of Pop, Madonna. On one hand, Sean Connery was celebrated as the sexiest man alive at 59, while headlines as far back as 1993 regarding Madonna were titled, "Grandma, Calm Down." She was 35 years old. Would anyone say that to Taylor Swift now? The judgment only intensified with each passing decade. The intense frenzy of tabloid culture in the 2000s latched onto Madonna with an obsessive ferocity. Her toned arms were scrutinised to the point of being labelled as corpse arms and gruesomely muscled. Indeed, age discrimination is often dubbed the last acceptable bias. It's a bias that affects not just celebrities like Madonna, but everyday people too, with 3 in 4 Americans over 45 seeing ageism as a barrier in job hunting. And in our relentless pursuit of youth and novelty, we risk overlooking the wisdom and experience that come with age, dismissing tradition and heritage in favour of the next new thing. But what made Madonna so interesting and controversial was her ability to remain so vibrantly within the public domain for so many decades, with groundbreaking albums that didn't shy away from sensuality and expression, challenging the narrow boundaries of acceptability for women in pop. Her audacious presence on the world stage had a major goal: to exist as a rallying cry for women of all ages to embrace their power and defy the limits imposed upon them by a society obsessed with youth and beauty. Things really came to a head in 2015 when BBC Radio 1 wouldn't play Madonna's new single Living for Love, and it begs several provocative questions about ageism in the music industry. Was Madonna unfairly targeted due to her age, with Radio 1 executives dismissing her as irrelevant simply because she no longer fit their desired demographic? Or was Radio 1's decision based solely on the perceived musical merit of the single? The controversy was ignited after the Daily Mail quoted an anonymous Radio 1 insider who described Madonna as old and irrelevant. In response, Madonna fans flooded Radio 1's social media with requests for the song, and several artists criticised the station's music policy, forcing Radio 1 to defend itself. The incident garnered significant media attention both in the UK and around the globe, sparking broader conversations about ageism within the music industry.
Yeah, acting my age. This is me. This is how I want to be. I can do what I want.
Now, it's important to note that Madonna had a long-standing good history with BBC Radio 1, dating back to her first appearance on the station in 1986. Over the years, she was interviewed by various Radio 1 personalities. Her concerts had been broadcasted on the station. But despite this relationship, Radio 1's head of music stated in 2014 that the station's audience had effectively moved on from Madonna, with the bulk of her fans being over 30 years old, and as a result, they would not play her new music anymore. The controversy surrounding Living for Love was also not an isolated incident. In 2012, Madonna's album MDNA and its lead single Give Me All Your Lovin' were also excluded from Radio 1's playlist, with DJ Scott Mills citing a lack of interest from the station's younger demographic. Now, this mirrored a ridiculous situation about 10 years later in 2023 when, thanks to TikTok, Kylie Minogue's Padam Padam charted at number 8. Yet, when BBC Radio 1 were counting down the top 10 that week, they skipped Kylie and played number 7 instead. So it got me thinking, do major mainstream radio stations like BBC Radio 1 ignore older artists because younger listeners are not interested? Or are younger listeners unfamiliar with older artists because traditional media omit them from the airwaves? It exposed a potential age bias in media that was socially constructed. Were they actively blocking older artists from being played in the first place and justified it under the excuse that they were no longer relevant? Well, honestly, how can you remain relevant if the media is gatekeeping? Eventually, Living for Love found its place on BBC's Radio 2's playlist, a station targeting audiences 35 years and older, and the single peaked at number 26 on the UK single chart. Ultimately, the Radio 1 fiasco served as a bleak reminder of the ongoing challenges faced by older artists in an industry that often prioritises novelty. It highlights the need for greater diversity and inclusivity in the music programming industry, ensuring that artists of all age are given a fair chance. Nevertheless, Madonna refused to submit, and in 2024 highlighted just how loyal her fan base is when she gave a free concert in Brazil with a record-breaking 1.6 million people in the audience, showing that even if traditional media wouldn't play her, she could still rule the stage in a mark of resistance and authority. But ageism continues to cast a long shadow over the landscape of pop music, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and stifling the creative expression of artists who dare to get older. So my recommendation is, think of your favourite singer of your adolescence and research what newer music they put out. And you may be surprised of how pop acts continue to contribute great songs, in spite of receiving little exposure. And if you like this video, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.